NFL star J.J. Watt to pay for funerals of Waukesha parade victims, which is a pretty amazing thing. So NFL star J.J. Watt, a Wisconsin native, says he'll pick up the cost of funerals for the 6 victims of Sunday's tragic Christmas parade attack. The Arizona Cardinals defensive end, a Waukesha, I can't even pronounce it, Waukesha native, who graduated from Pewaukee High School and the University of Wisconsin-Madison, made the announcement through local media this week, Fox News said. J.J. Watt is covering the funeral costs for everyone that lost their life in the Waukesha Christmas parade, journalist and author Corey Jennerjohn wrote on Twitter. That is an amazing gesture, Jennerjohn wrote. He has such a huge heart. Watt took to Twitter himself just hours after the deadly tragedy on Sunday. Just now seeing what happened at the holiday parade back home in Waukesha tonight, he tweeted, "Horrific images, truly hoping everyone is going to be okay and those involved are now safe. Thankful to everyone who rushed to action and helped the wounded," he said. So Darrell Brooks, a 39-year-old career criminal and wannabe rapper, is charged with 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, and in the case with a 6th count pending after an 8-year-old boy succumbed to his injuries. And police said Brooks was fleeing a domestic incident when he barreled onto the route of the annual parade, injuring an additional 62 people, according to a complaint, and he's being held on a $5 million bail in this case, which, by the way, if you don't know this, he was originally being held on he had like a $1,000 bond bail, right? And ended up paying it. Well, his mom ended up paying it, right? And it's just a whole crazy situation. And if you don't even know, according to court documents, basically, this was no accident. Like, apparently, he purposely sped up and aimed for people. Okay? It's some really dark stuff. But the reason why we wanted to cover this is because you want to get yourself into a position financially to where you could be generous in times of need. Like, you could end up taking on something like this yourself, right? Now, obviously, everyone is not going to be in this type of situation where they could afford to literally pay for the funerals of all these victims. And people who end up stumbling upon this episode may not realize just how expensive funerals can end up being, right? We're talking like $10,000 plus. It could easily get to that price point very quickly. I mean, just the coffin alone could be a few $1,000s, right? The location could be a few $1,000s, right? Like it's actually crazy how expensive it is for you to die, right? So the main thing to really learn from this, right? Because obviously this is a horrific accident. Well, not accident, horrific attack, right? The thing to really understand is that what you can learn from J.J. Watt is that you should get yourself into a position to where if you wanted to, if you had the capability of doing it, you could be generous to people who have been affected by something horrible. Now, it may not be something as brutal as literal murder, but it might be something where, like, okay, maybe you know someone personally whose car broke down, right? Or their car blew up, like caught on fire. So their car completely burned down and they didn't have good enough insurance to end up paying for it. Well, if you are in a position financially to where maybe you could buy like a cheap $5,000 car or $2,000 car to replace the car that they were driving so that they could at least get to work, go home, that kind of stuff safely, that would be an amazing situation, right? Because it would have no negative impact on yourself, but you can make things easier on people who are struggling, okay? Now, again, This is a horrific moment in time. But JJ Watt doing this for these victims is very good because this allows the family to not have to stress about that point, that specific part of this horrific thing, right? It allows them to have more time to truly grieve the fact that, guess what? Their kids, their family members are no longer here. Like, this can really help out people who are dealing with something as bad as this, right? It allows people to grieve. It allows people to really think about their next steps without being forced to just go from like point A to point B, point C, point D. Like I need to pay this, I need to pay this, I got to take care of this, I got to take care of this, and then by the time you know it, it's been like 2 months after everything's said and done, and you still didn't grieve, right? You didn't cry, you didn't like vent, you didn't even talk to anyone about it. Depending on your mental situation, you didn't even see like a therapist, right? So some people might not see this as a big deal, right? But it truly is. I think it's an amazing thing that this NFL star JJ Watt did because, again, this has zero impact on himself, right? Financially speaking, him doing this for these victims has zero impact on his financial situation. He is a mega multi-millionaire, right? But he is in the financial position to make a decision to be generous to victims of a horrific attack so that he could end up making it a little bit easier on them, right? So I think that's an amazing thing. And the thing is, you can really only do that if you are financially stable enough to do something like that, right? Like, you can't do this if you are living paycheck to paycheck. You can't do this if you have massive amounts of debt, right? You can't do this if the money that you end up, basically donating to these victims will put your own family at risk. And so the best way to do that is to learn how to get out of debt. So if you want to learn how to get out of debt, go to 40unbox.com so that you could put yourself in a position so that you could be generous to people who are in a horrific situation. Like, you could be that person to be like, hey, let me help you out. Hey, take this money and move on with your life, right? Hey, grieve, right? So that's something to really think about. And look, money is a tool, and it's a tool that can be truly used to help out other people when you have it, when you manage it correctly. We'll see you in future episodes. Stay tuned for more financial commentary.